Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Glory Glory Man United podcast. This is your Brighton preview show on the Friday before the game. It was so good to have the Premier League back again after another long international break. And join me today to preview the Brighton game and talk about all the club matters off the field is Callum McFadden. Welcome back to the show, Callum.
Always a delight to be on with yourself, Kyle, and United are always a club with so many talking points, so looking forward to this.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. It seems every time United have an international break, there's lots of off the field stories, and this has been by far the worst I think that I can remember. Um, and it's just continuous. It's one story leads to another. You know, we with Mason Greenwood being loaned out to Getafe, we thought we'd park that at least temporarily, but more problems have been on the horizon with the Jadon Sancho and Antony, of course, as well. Now we'll start off with Sancho because that's been very topical today again with the manager's press conference. The manager was asked repeatedly about Sancho, and he did not. He didn't even use Sancho's name when he was answering the questions. He was batting the questions away. Didn't really want to talk about him, and he was keen to stress that he's optimistic with the players that he does have available, and says they are motivated to get 3 points tomorrow. Now, what has happened? Everybody knows that Sancho basically accused the manager of lying in a social media post after the manager's interview following the Arsenal game, where the manager said he wasn't training well enough to be selected. Sancho kept that post um, up for about 9 days, I think, until he eventually took it down. According to the Athletic, he has been invited to apologise to the manager and to the club, which he's refused to do so. So now he will not be taking part in first team training for the foreseeable future and will not be selected tomorrow. So, what's your thoughts on all this, then, Callum?
In terms of the situation, I find it very strange that Jadon Sancho decided to respond to Eric Ten Hag via social media in the way that he did, pinning the tweet that he put out as well and keeping it up there for many days pinned. I don't know if it's still pinned, but found that very, very strange. Really, he should be going and knocking the manager's door and trying to have a conversation with either the manager or maybe even someone like Steve McLaren, who could be a bridge between the two of them. So to put it on social media right after the game was very poor advice from whoever is advising Jadon Sancho. And it came to light this week, of course. You mentioned The Athletic. They also reported that during his time at Dortmund, he missed several team meetings. So much so that Edin Terzic, obviously now the Dortmund manager, who was the assistant manager when Sancho was there initially, used to have to go and knock his door and basically take him to team meetings to ensure that he would be there. So here's a player with history of potentially being late or not being the most professional, it would suggest, given the reports that have came out. So I think the fact that he has came out so passionately in his own defence is an interesting approach, given that the evidence that is there seems to point to someone that maybe isn't always the most professional. But again, only Jadon himself will know that, and everyone at the club. But for Eric Ten Hag to say publicly he wasn't training well, then you have to take the manager at face value, in my opinion.
Yeah, and normally when the manager goes public about a player, that's usually the final straw. The relationship has probably been declining for a long time, and it seems to be coming to an end now. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Sancho has play his last game for the club. Potentially not if there's an injury crisis and he does apologise eventually. But I do think that he will leave the club in January now. Be it to Chelsea or to Saudi Arabia. Um, a lot of people have been patient with Sancho. They're fans of the player, and they're still hopeful that he'll come back into the team. But I think it's over now. What do you think, Callum?
I think realistically, it probably is over, but there are other circumstances at the club. Obviously, Anthony's absence for the it says at the moment for the foreseeable future. We don't know if that's going to be days, weeks, or months. We can only wait until United update us on that. But that might mean there's a way back in, because Palestri might get the opportunities now to play in that right-hand side of midfield. But if he was to get injured, then does that invite Jayden back into the fold via default, really?
Yeah, well, Ten Hag is very strict about these things, and even if there was an injury crisis, he still might not select Jadon Sancho. I mean, we've even seen the manager bench Marcus Rashford against Wolves, so and he was like the a most important player last season. And obviously he's seen off Ronaldo, he's seen off De Gea. And Sancho really is kind of small fry compared to those players. So I wouldn't be surprised if the relationship is completely broken down now and he doesn't play for the club again. And if he does, it'd probably be the odd substitute appearance. He may play in the League Cup or something. But I don't see Sancho having a significant role between now and January, and he'll probably leave if the right offer comes in then in that window. And then with this, if the situation with Antony is not resolved by January, then the manager might look at bringing someone in on the right hand side, because as you say, um, we've had three players now who can play on the right who are not available for a whole host of different reasons. Now we're down to Palestri and Ahmad, who's injured as well. Um, Now Palestri, he's only had one start for United against Real Betis in a meaningless game when United had the tie wrapped up. Um, every fan I know has been calling for him to get more minutes, and this seems like the perfect time to give him a chance, because every time he's come on as a sub, or every time he's played in pre-season, he's been, massively impressive, and it looks like he's got, he's like an old-fashioned winger. He goes past people. He's got pace. He's a good crosser of the ball. So he's someone I'm very excited about and want to see him get a few starts now. But the manager has probably three different options tomorrow. He can go with Palestri, which we hope that he does. We'll get your opinion on in a second. Well, I certainly hope that he does. He could opt for Bruno Fernandes on the right, which he's done on numerous occasions, or he could play Garnacho on the left and switch Rashford to the right, which has happened quite a lot in the past, but that doesn't really get the best out of Rashford, so I don't really want to see that. So, Callum, are you hoping to see Palestri start tomorrow?
I think Palestri starting would be the best thing for the team. Marcus Rashford isn't the same player on the right-hand side. He spoke to Gary Neville, of course, in the overlap in the summer, and he admitted that himself, that he prefers playing on that left-hand side, and he even finds playing through the middle at times a bit awkward. But he mentioned that the right-hand side of midfield, the right-hand side of the attack, is the position that he struggles with most out of the front three attacking positions. So I wouldn't like to think that he would start there. Totally agree with you, Kyle. I think if you play Bruno Fernandes there, then you're losing a lot of his influence in the centre of the park. He can still be effective in that area, but nowhere near as effective as he is as the linchpin and as the number 10 in the side. So for me, I think Palestri is the sensible option. It means that you can get the best out of Rashford on the left-hand side. You can get the best out of Fernandes in the central position when you're really going to need him tomorrow, because Brighton, as we know, have got a really strong team throughout the piece, but in their midfield in particular, they're quite strong. So you're going to need Fernandes to try and open up that holding midfield and defence for Brighton to create chances.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruno is definitely most effective when he's in the middle. But sometimes in big games he can play on the right. I see him do it against Manchester City, for example. But I don't think Brighton are as good as they are. I don't think they're quite in that bracket. So we should be putting square pegs in square holes. And go with a winger on the right hand side. Yeah, my front three would definitely be Rashford on the left and Hoyland making his first start, hopefully, and then Palestri on the right. Now we're all getting a bit giddy after Hoyland's cameo against Arsenal, and we're all desperate now for him to start and get his first goal. How excited are you about this player then, Callum?
I think he's a terrific signing for United. It's the sort of signing that when I was on Beyond the Pitch with Phil Brown for a number of years, we used to talk about United signing players a lot older in terms of strikers. Obviously, Van Persie, Cavani, Falcao, Romelu Lukaku. There was Alexis Sanchez. There was a pattern where United were going for what they thought was the finished product, or maybe just past their peak in the hope that they could get the best out of them. Whereas for so many years you've been crying out for United to sign someone like Erling Haaland, who they could have signed when he was leaving Molde. And obviously now Rasmus Højlund they have been able to get, because you look at a player like him, he's the right age, he's only going to improve. Everyone's listening's probably seen the clip of him with Denmark during the week where he's geeing up the fans, he's a real leader. And that's exactly what United need. They need fresh enthusiasm. They need a player who wants to be at the club, which he does. He admitted he was really excited to come to United. It's a club that he supported when he was a boy. So for me, it's a real positive signing, and I totally agree with you that he has to be United's starting striker. He is young, so he's not going to necessarily be 8 out of 10 every week, but with the physical qualities he's got, the technical qualities that he's got, I think he'll be a success this season for United and in the years to come. The only slight worry is fitness, because he had a few niggles here and there at Atalanta, but you've just got to hope that United's medical team can get on top of that, keep him fit, and hopefully get him firing.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that he's going to get off to a really good start and maybe get 15 goals a season, and then I think he'll gradually increase his total in the next few seasons. That's what I'm anticipating anyway. And yeah, his rise has been rapid. I mean, he went from Copenhagen to Sturm Graz to Atalanta and United, all I think in the space of about 18 months. So it's been a rapid rise, and I believe that he has. We of course are playing Copenhagen in the Champions League group stages, and does he have two twin brothers at that club as well? So that's going to be interesting if he comes up against his brothers. Um, so yeah, obviously a very exciting Champions League campaign coming up as well with. Not only Copenhagen with the story with Højlund and then Eriksson going back there to Denmark as well. Bayern Munich has lots of history between Bayern and Manchester United. Mostly Bayern wins, but probably the most important one was the Manchester United win. Um, and then, of course, Galatasaray, massive history there. We all know what happened in 1993 with the how difficult they made it for United there with the "Welcome to Hell" banner and the intimidation at the airport and everything like that. So hopefully you don't see that again in 2023. But certainly, I think the away fixture in particular will be a difficult one for United. Um, just while we're talking about that, do you still think United will get out of that group?
It's a minimum that United get out of the group. It's a difficult group. Bayern Munich are one of the best sides in Europe. Thomas Tuchel didn't quite get everything that he wanted in the transfer window. He wanted João Palhinha. He wanted Kyle Walker. He didn't get either of those, so he's a bit short at right back, having let Pavard go to Inter Milan, and a bit short, of course, in the centre of the pitch, having let Gravenberch join Liverpool. So if there's a few injuries there, then that could help United. But when Bayern have their strongest 11 available, they're a very strong team. They've got players in abundance with quality, and of course, bad and Harry Kane is another example of being able to improve your team even further, because for me, Kane's one of the best strikers in world football, and I think he'll score many goals for Bayern in the Bundesliga and in Europe. So United have to be wary of that. They obviously know Harry Kane very well. In terms of Galatasaray, it's a tough away game, as you say. You have to be backing yourself to beat them at home. You have to be backing yourself, and you just got to hope that you can get the job done away as well. They've obviously signed players like Wilfried Zaha, who, again, we all know from his brief time at United and time at Palace. So that'll be an intriguing one. And Copenhagen, without being too disrespectful, you expect full points home and away there. So they should get through the group. And for me, it's a minimum for Ten Hag to get through that group.
Yeah, so you want to get maximum points against Copenhagen, beat Galatasaray at home, and then looking to get probably a win somewhere else. Any points we get against Bayern would be a bonus. So moving back to the Premier League, and the build-up of this game has been totally overshadowed by Sancho, like we talked about, but also Antony, who has now been basically placed on gardening leave by the club. He will not be training with the team or being selected for the foreseeable future. But he's not being suspended as yet because, of course, unlike the Greenwood situation, he's not been arrested as yet. So he's just been taken out of the limelight, really. Ten Hag said earlier that he's disappointed, but he's okay. It just seems that every week now, United are issuing statements about players regarding off the field issues, and that's, like I said earlier, there's 3 players who can play on the right who are not available for selection for different reasons, all kind of off the field issues or disciplinary issues. United has become now. United seems to be always a circus, especially in the post Ferguson era. But this last fortnight really has been dreadful for the club, hasn't it, Callum?
It's been a really crazy time. You're right with the off the field issues and the statements that have been put out regarding certain players. Obviously, the ownership situation continues to rumble on and on and on. In regards to the Antony situation, I think United have done the right thing. To be honest with you, I think he, as you say, has been taken out the limelight. He has released statements saying that he is. He believes he's innocent and that he can prove that. So United are in a position where they've taken him out of the limelight. He is going to obviously try and deal with his off the field issues at the moment and return. He would hope if everything goes the way that he says it will. But as I say, I think United have covered that one sensibly by taking him out of the limelight. The situation, of course, with Sancho we've talked about. Again, I don't think they've got too much of a choice, given the fact that he's clearly upset not only the manager but players in the dressing room, and obviously the Greenwood situation. We all know he's now playing for Getafe, and I don't think too many people will have any complaints that he's no longer at United. I guess some might have a different opinion, but for me, I think that was the right decision for Manchester United and the right decision for football in England. I think that's a decision that should have been made. And I think, Greenwood can potentially rebuild his career in Spain. But as the statement from the club said, I don't think he'll have any future with Manchester United long term. But it's not ideal for Ten Hag, as you say. All three of those players could have played on the right-hand side. Added to that, you've got Ahmad injured. So really, it's only leaving Palestri in that position unless you were to somehow try Garnacho there. So, yeah, it's not ideal. But I think the club and Ten Hag have dealt with it as best they can, albeit the Greenwood situation out of the three was messily handled. But hopefully the club will have learned a lot of lessons from that.
Yeah, Sancho's outburst on social media has really come at the wrong time for him because the right wing berth is wide open now, and was probably his for the taking. Had he been on the right side of the manager and not done what he done, um, if he just got his head down and trained really hard in the last fortnight, then he possibly could have started against Brighton, but that's not going to happen now. In fact, um, he went to a nightclub in New York to celebrate the birthday of one of his friends in the music industry or something. Now, whilst I agree that players are entitled to have a life away from the pitch, when you're currently in dispute with the manager and there's a disciplinary issue, it's not a good look to go clubbing in Manhattan, during a national break. So he's not doing himself any favors. I mean, according to Sky Sports, who've been reporting on this today again, that the players have some sympathy with how with Sancho's situation, in that they feel that he has been training well, but the other players don't apparently have sympathy with how Sancho has handled this situation with Ten Hag, and they thought it's just absolute stupidity what he done going on social media now after the manager's interview, and now the refusal to apologise has made it worse. And yeah, well, Palestri might be the one who benefits from all this, and I certainly hope so, because um, not only is he a very talented footballer, in my opinion, and could make it at this level, he's a very humble kid, real likable kid, and he's a full Uruguayan international. So I'd love to see him get a chance. You can't judge any player until he's had about 10 starts at least, and then you can make a decision as to whether to persist with him, or loan him out, or sell him. So we just want to see him get a proper chance, because, as I say, he's only had one start so far. So maybe this is his time. Let's hope so, because I like to see Ten Hag be brave, and play the young, inexperienced player, rather than just fitting a senior player in that position, who's obviously going to have to move out of position, like Bruno, like we touched on. It's be easy for the manager just to select Bruno there, but it would be brave to put Palestri in, and that's what I want to see. You want United managers to be brave. Um, so Another, not so much off the field issue, but uh, it's been an ongoing issue for months and maybe even years now. But away from United, it is reared its ugly head again. Is the Harry Maguire situation. Um, now we remember 2 weeks ago when he was cheered onto the pitch by Arsenal supporters. In recent pre-seasons this year and last year, we've seen him get booed by United fans in the USA, Ireland, and in Australia. Um, and I'm sorry to bring up this game, Scotland against England. It obviously didn't go your way, Callum. Uh, Harry Maguire scored an own goal in that game. Another Harry Maguire own goal, unfortunately. But the biggest story was that he was basically being goaded the whole night by Scotland fans every time he touched the ball. Gareth Southgate was very, very unhappy. But he wasn't so much having to go at the Scotland fans. He said that was a consequence of how he's been treated by the pundits and the media in recent years. And now his mother, Zoe Maguire, has taken to social media to defend him, and she said like she accepts that footballers at the top level will get criticised, but she believes that he's just being abused now, and it's totally out of order. Um, I myself and start like I've been a massive critic of him. Anyone who listens to this podcast will know that. I'm not a fan of Harry as a player, but I do think the criticism and the abuse has gone too far now. I've never seen a player being singled out so much, being lampooned so much, that I can remember. I just like he might not be good enough for Manchester United or even England, but he doesn't deserve the abuse or the ridicule that he gets. What's your thoughts on it, Callum?
I understand that to an extent, but at the same time, Harry, when he goes onto a football pitch, is responsible for his own performances. They've not been good enough with United. And when he played for England, they had that celebration in the friendly, a game. I can't remember who England were playing. It was about 18 months ago, maybe, where he had his fingers in his ears pointing at critics. And that put even more attention onto him. So I don't always think Harry's helped himself, in all honesty. In terms of the level of ridicule that he's receiving, it's not ideal for any footballer. But again, the best way to combat that is by performing on the pitch and by making the critics eat their words, by you focusing on what you do, getting games under your belt, which Gareth Southgate has given him with England, and proving yourself that way. I think it would have been best for all parties if he left United this summer. It didn't happen for one reason or another, but he has to basically take ownership of the situation and perform better on the pitch, and eventually the fans will move on to, whether that's United fans or fans of other clubs, will move on to the next player or whoever it may be. Um, Guys like John Terry many years ago got criticised from every single away fan and fans of football in general, and they just got on with it and they played their game. And I know we're in a different world now, of course, and his mental well-being, of course, has to be looked after, and that's the responsibility of both United and England. So I hope they are giving him any support that he requires, because, of course, it's not nice to be on the receiving end of criticism and abuse, but I do also think he has to do himself a favour by putting in better performances and perhaps realising that for the betterment of his career, moving away from United could be the fresh start he desperately needs. I mean, look at Johnny Evans. He's now back at the club, but Johnny Evans wasn't fancied by Van Gaal. He goes and plays at West Bromwich Albion, then goes to Leicester City. He proves himself again all over. He was linked to a move to Man City, and obviously now he's back with the club many years later. So you can go away and rebuild your career again, and for me, that's what Harry has to do now.
Yeah, just on that. We finished the Arsenal game with the centre back pairing from the Claude Puel era at Leicester 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, it's incredible. Only could only happen at Manchester United. The 35-year-old Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire, who's shot to pieces now, has absolutely no confidence. So, and they came on at 1-1, I think, and the game finished 3-1, which is very unfortunate and typical. Everything goes wrong for Harry Maguire now, but like you say, he does. Not only his performance has been really, really poor in the last couple of seasons, but some of his interviews leave a lot to be desired. Like I remember against Burnley, he was at fault for the Burnley goal. He got he was in an offside position and got Varane's goal chalked off. And rather than take responsibility in post-match interview, he just said it was a collective issue with everybody was responsible, and really it was him. He should have owned it that day. And like you say, the year cupping against Albania, I mean, scoring against that level of opposition does not shut up the critics in a very, you know, mediocre qualifier. Yeah, other interviews have been very unimpressive. And this summer, he had the opportunity to go to West Ham for £30 million. That would have been a great deal for United in the circumstances. But it seemed as if he wanted a very, very large payoff from the club, and they weren't willing to meet his demands. And again, and he could have went. I think David Moyes and Maguire would be perfect for each other. That system, the manager, would really help him rebuild his career. But he decided not to take that because he wanted a large payoff. And it look and from the outside, it looks as if he's prioritizing money over football. And that's not a good look either. But yeah, I just had a slight moment of sympathy, watching this Scotland England game, just thinking this ridicule is just on another level now. I've never seen anything like this before. And Southgate was very, very angry about it. But like you say, players at the top level, they have to handle these things when it's not going their way. They're paid handsomely, and they have to take criticism. But it's just an avalanche now coming up Maguire's way, and um, I just have no confidence in him playing games for United now. I'm relieved that Lindelof and Martinez are available tomorrow, as confirmed by Ten Hag earlier. Because I just don't think Maguire is probably not in the right place mentally, to be starting games for United. And he seems to make a mistake in every game he plays. Even in pre-season, he was making mistakes. So yeah, he should have taken that West Ham move, and he didn't. So yeah, I think it's best for all parties that he moves on as well. Um, so let's just talk a wee bit about Brighton. They've won 3 out of their 4 games so far. The only game they lost was against West Ham, which was totally unexpected, a home loss against West Ham. But West Ham have started the season superbly. Brighton had 78% possession against West Ham and lost the game 3-1. West Ham were so clinical that day. Um, that's what United need to be tomorrow. They need to be clinical. We cannot afford to give away a 2-goal lead in the first 10 minutes like we did against Forest. We need to start well. United Brighton games tend to be very competitive. Apart from the 4-0 at their place a couple of seasons ago under Ranić, but last season they were all very close encounters. I think Brighton won 2-1 at Old Trafford in Ten Hag's first ever match, 1-0 at their place, and then United won on penalties in the FA Cup semi-final. So they're always very, very close encounters and competitive games, and I can see it happening again here. I could see it being 2-1 either way, maybe 3-2 either way in this game. But United really, really need the points. But there's a lot. We've talked about United's danger men. There's a lot of danger men in this Brighton team as well. Ferguson, of course, didn't feature for Ireland, unfortunately for us, against France and Holland. If when you're taking on that level of opposition, you need the likes of Ferguson in the team, but we didn't. But he might make it back for this United game. Of course, Matoma, but he's obviously been disillusioned with his performances against Aaron Wan-Bissaka in the past. So hopefully Wan-Bissaka can get the better of him again, keep him in his pocket. The left back, I find his name very hard to pronounce. You might know it.
Estepinian.
Yeah, he's been superb this season. Um, he's also a threat. They've got James Milner now at right back, the veteran James Milner, who's played for every single one of United's rivals, so he's going to be popular tomorrow. Danny Wilbeck, as you all know, still a very good player. Solly March, and Billy Gilmore, someone you'll be familiar with. He's now starting for Brighton. You must be pleased for your fellow Scotsman that he's starting for Premier League club now, because it took a wee bit of time for him to become a first teamer at a Premier League club, hasn't it?
It has, and for me, he's one of the most talented players Scotland have produced in the last 10 or 15 years, very comfortable on the ball, very confident young man. Obviously, was at Chelsea, part of the squad when they won the Champions League under Thomas Tuchel. He's obviously that loan to Norwich when they get promoted to the Premier League. It didn't work out for him, and I'll be honest with you, I thought that was a strange move, given the fact that Norwich were going to be defending more than they were going to be attacking. But I think Chelsea sold him for about £5 million. So, it's a steal for Brighton, and I think it's De Zerbi's the right manager for him. They're playing an attacking possession-based style of play, which suits Billy Gilmore down to the ground. And for me, he's a player that's only going to continue to improve in the years to come. And from a Scotland perspective, it looks as if we are going to qualify for the European Championships. So we really, really need him to be playing regularly at a high level, which thankfully he is doing so.
Yeah, that just reminds me, actually. Now, Scott McTominay has had unbelievable qualifying campaign for Scotland, 6 goals in 5 games or something like that. But he doesn't feature for Man United very much, especially under Ten Hag. It seems as if to get the best out of him, you have to play him further forward. But of course, he's never going to displace Bruno Fernandes in the United team. So, but he could do a very good job, I think, for most Premier League teams. So, do you think that he needs to move on as well to further his club career?
I think he's in the position where if Ten Hag's not trusting him to even come on in games for large periods, then he has to move on. Personally, I like Scott. I think he's a good player. I don't think he should be a regular starter for a club of United stature, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to Scott. I just think if he was to leave United, it's not going to be to go and start for one of the other top 6 or 7. I think it would be the clubs slightly below that. That being said, though, I think he's a player who can be very effective. He's scored big goals for United in the past, and as you say, with Scotland, he's been absolutely fantastic in this qualifying campaign. And I think one of the main things that allows him to do that is with Scotland, he's one of the main men. He's one of the players that we look up to in the national team as someone who can make things happen, who can be relied on, and is one of the first names in the team sheet. Whereas at United, he doesn't have that luxury. So I think a move for him would be the best for his career. I personally think he's still got a part to play at United, but it appears as if Ten Hag doesn't really think so.
Yeah, you can easily tell who Ten Hag rates and who doesn't rate based on the minutes that they get, and it's obvious that Maguire and McTominay are not part of his plans. Probably Martial isn't either, but he has to make do with him as he's a bit light in terms of numbers in that position. I thought it was quite amusing that Martial turned up 3 hours early for training. Now, so much has been made of players being late at Manchester United for team meetings or training, but turned up 3.5 hours early was certainly very amusing. He certainly will be in the manager's good books after that one.
100%. And also turning up early to training. Hopefully he can go on the score sheet early at the weekend.
Yeah, if he starts, which I hope he doesn't. I want Højlund to start the game, obviously. But another disappointing bit of team news for tomorrow is that Sofiane Amrabat is going to miss the game through injury, which we're not surprised because he pulled out of the internationals for Morocco. It seems that we always seem to sign good players, but injury-prone players. Like saying it took Højlund 4 games to make his debut due to a stress fracture of the back. Varane, brilliant player, but always injured. And Amrabat has had his fair share of injury issues as well. I'm very, very excited about him, though. We all know he had an amazing World Cup. He had a brilliant performance against France in the semi-final, and we all seen that clip where he chases after Mbappe and takes the ball off him early. And he was immense for Fiorentina in the Europa Conference League final against West Ham. So yeah, once he's fit and available, that's going to be exciting. But Mason Mount, of course, injured 2 games in for United. Is it a concern for you that United always seem to sign injury-prone players, Colin?
It's one of those things where it certainly is frustrating. In terms of Mount, though, he's played a lot of football in recent years, so he's not someone who normally is out for extended periods of time. So I wouldn't be too worried about that one. Højlund's the only one I would be slightly concerned about because he did have quite a few knocks when he was at Atalanta. And given the fact that he's a physical striker and he'll come up against physical defenders in the Premier League, that's one to keep an eye on. In terms of Amrabat, Gab Marcotti made a great point on the Gab and Jules podcast this week, where it's important to have realistic expectations for Amrabat. He is a very good player, but to expect he's going to perform like World Cup Amrabat, as Gab put it, every single week is very optimistic. He's a solid player, obviously coming in from Fiorentina, but if he was performing the way he did at the World Cup week in, week out, then he would be going for 80, 90 million and he would have his pick of clubs around Europe. But he is a very good player. Hopefully United can get the best out of him, get even more consistency into his game. But just a shame that he won't be available to Ten Hag in the short term, which, as you say, seems typical of United whenever they sign anyone at the moment.
Yeah, it's hugely frustrating. But as Ten Hag says, we've got a big squad, we've got a quality squad, and we can cope with it. Yeah, so it's amazing that we're missing three players on the right, yet we still have someone as good as Palestri to start in the game. Someone I rate very highly. Um, yeah, so I think United's team tomorrow, I think, will be Onana, obviously, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Martinez, um, probably Dallo ahead of Regulon, Casemiro, Ericsson, Bruno, Rashford, Hoyland, and Palestri. That's the team that I would select, and the team that it probably is most likely. Is that how you see it, Callum?
Yeah, I think that's the way he has to go. I don't think he doesn't have too many choices, as we've talked about in the right hand side of midfield. It's a similar situation at centre back, and even a similar situation in the midfield area, obviously with Amrabat not being available. So I think that's the sensible way to go about it, and I think that is the way that he ultimately will go about it as well.
Yeah, and I would be. We've seen issues United had this season with being overrun in midfield. So I would look at potential. Now we know Ericsson doesn't have the greatest energy in the world. So I would look at maybe playing Ericsson at number 10 and playing Bruno further back in the number 8 role alongside Casemiro, because he obviously has more legs, more energy. I think so far this season, I think he's second in the Premier League, Bruno, for the most number of kilometers covered. Um, so I think it might be a sensible choice to play him a bit deeper and play Ericsson in the number 10 role, because Bruno, seen how brilliant he was in games last season where he played in that position, spraying the ball left and right like Paul Scholes. So, I mean, he's got the tenacity, he can tackle. Yeah, so if he can play that role if need be, and that's probably what I would go for tomorrow, because I'd be a little concerned, if um, Casemiro's left exposed. Um, and that's why I'm excited by Amrabat coming in to play alongside Casemiro, because we need to shore up that midfield. It needs to have a more solid look about it, especially in big games. We need, for example, the Allianz Arena Wednesday night. If you have everybody fit and available, you'd be playing Amrabat alongside Casemiro there, and probably Bruno at number 10, because you need to be solid against the big teams. Even like Forest and Wolves were cutting us apart. Probably because Bruno and Mount were pushing up too high, and then the ball they were the ball out from the opposition was beating our press, and then Casemiro was left exposed. It was almost like four runners running at Casemiro. It was insane. When obviously that needs to be corrected, because we haven't looked solid at all in midfield. So Amrabat will play a huge role in that, and obviously Mason Mount will need to adapt to a number 8 role. And yeah, but for now I would play Bruno there and actually number 10 against Brighton, because Brighton are very good in midfield, and a very, very dangerous team. I don't want to give them any easy opportunities. Of course, they have Bart Verbruggen playing in goal now for them, a goalkeeper who was linked with United in the summer. Now that Brighton snapped him up for peanuts, no doubt now he's going to be a world class goalkeeper, and would probably cost about 70 million in the future. But Onana is the one that we went for. He's almost nonchalant on the ball, isn't he? He's very cocky, isn't he? Very self assured. Um, but it's probably a downgrade in shot stopping from peak De Gea. I'm not sure that the De Gea who left was peak De Gea, but Onana, is he someone you're confident in, Callum?
I think it's a sensible signing given the way Ten Hag wants to play. I don't think you would find many goalkeepers better at shot stopping than Pete De Gea, to be honest. I think he at his peak was absolutely fantastic, and it was just a great travesty for him that he was playing in poor United teams. You know, he obviously won a Premier League title with the club, but he could have won far more had he played in a different era at the club. So, yeah, for me, he's a modern day United legend to hear, but the club rightfully, in my opinion, moved on from him this summer. I don't think they handled his exit particularly well, if I'm honest. I think he deserved more respect. That's just my opinion. But I think it was right to move on and get a goalkeeper in who the manager trusts. And you've signed a goalkeeper who played in the Champions League final last year, you know, so you're getting someone of elite quality, someone who's proven across Europe, obviously Ajax and Inter Milan. So a really solid goalkeeper who I think will do good things for United. The only big concern for me is that when United are going to probably be without him in January when the African Cup of Nations starts, how United cope there and how the defence copes with that change. But before that obviously comes up, that he needs to put in big performances, and I'm sure that he will do because, as I say, I rate him highly as a goalkeeper.
Yeah, and of course, he was nominated for the Ballon d'Or as well as Mary Earps, the Man United women's goalkeeper. So both our number one goalkeepers been nominated for Ballon d'Or, so that's great to see. Um, yeah, so let's get on to yeah. I just want to make a final point there about De Gea, as you mentioned. Yeah, it was handled very badly, but ultimately the right decision, like you say, because where's De Gea now? He doesn't have a club. So he wasn't in high demand. If he wasn't able to find anywhere to go, I mean, look at the amount of players from Europe that the Saudis are signing, and he didn't even go over there as yet, anyway. But as a free agent, he can probably still sign for anyone between now and January. But it's very sad to see a player of his standing posting training videos by himself on social media. And even I'm slightly surprised that he hasn't managed to find a club. Even like Roma, Mourinho at Roma would certainly probably love to have him, although he probably has a quality goalkeeper already. But yeah, it's sad for him. But yeah, the fact that he hasn't found a club proves that United were right to let him go. So finally, prediction time. What's the score going to be tomorrow, Callum?
I think there'll be lots of goals in the game. I'm going to go for 3-2 United.
Yeah, I can see lots of goals in this game, and I love your positivity that you think United will get more than Brighton. And I certainly hope so. Given that I'm going to the game, when you're paying £50 for a ticket, you not only do you want to be entertained, you want your team to win. And it's if you lose the 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, then it can ruin your whole weekend, especially when you're going to Manchester for the weekend. So, yeah, I'm just really hoping for the points. If it was a dull game and it was an own goal by Lewis Dunk and it was 1-0 to United, I would take that all day long over the entertainment. Yeah, ideally you want to be entertained and get the result, but if we just got the result and no entertainment, I'd be satisfied with that. And we badly need the points after everything that's been going on off the pitch. So we'll leave it there for today. I will be back with a guest for the post-match reaction to the Brighton game on Sunday. But for now, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show again, Callum.
Always a pleasure to be on, and as you say, it'll be interesting to see how United get on.
Please, everybody, like the video on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast and get some of your comments in down below. And I shall see you again then, Callum.
Absolutely. All the best. Take care.